The first men's international window of the year has been completed, which saw Mexico win the CONCACAF Nations League. Elsewhere, Argentina demonstrated that they're the best team in the world, all while Japan, Iran and New Zealand qualified to the World Cup. All of this shakes up the FIFA ranking, which is becoming more and more important as we approach the final stretch to decide the pots for the World Cup draw, so let's have a look at how things stand at the moment. Argentina won their 2 matches and extended their lead because France and Spain lost points. La Roja won on penalties in the second leg, but the rule says that in 2-leg series, it's the result of the match that counts, not the penalty shootout. Thus, this is considered a draw and Spain lose points. England won both matches but gained very little because their opponents were quite low in the table. Brazil stayed the same because what they gained against Colombia lost it to Argentina. The Netherlands get some points for the 2 draws with Spain. Now Portugal and Belgium went through the same situation. Both lost the first leg, which cost them many points, but won the second and limited the damage, and thus they don't lose many points in total. As we know, one team's gain is another team's loss, and the gap between Germany and Italy, which was 27 points, was reduced to only 1. Croatia gained some points thanks to their win over France in the first leg, while Morocco, despite winning both matches, gained very little as their opponents are low ranked. Uruguay and Colombia drew and lost, and therefore lose a big chunk of points. That is the positions, but what is the situation with the World Cup pots? The top 4 have a great advantage over the rest. Just England alone are 43 points ahead of Brazil, so as long as they qualify directly, they will be in pot 1, because all the teams that go to the playoffs will go down to pot 4, regardless of the position in their ranking. Brazil didn't leave a good impression in their visit to El Monumental, but they still have a good advantage, both in the qualifiers and in the FIFA ranking. In the former, they're 6 points clear of Venezuela, the team in the playoff positions, and in the latter, they're 24 points ahead of the Dutch, the team right next to them, and 58 ahead of Italy, the last of the seeded teams so far. So as long as Brazil qualify directly, they will be in pot 1. Because Brazil will qualify directly, right? Elsewhere, the Netherlands and Portugal got off pretty easy and can still breathe. The Dutch gained 5 points, which doesn't sound much, but anything you can take is good, especially if you're facing Spain. Portugal, as we mentioned, minimized the damage and didn't lose many points. They are both more than 30 points clear of Italy, and as long as they navigate in the qualifiers with no upsets, they will be in pot 1. Belgium, on the other hand, is not as comfortable as these two, as they're only 17 points ahead of Italy and they can't afford any mistakes. Italy kept Germany at bay, but only just. Coming back from a 3-0 deficit helps them stay in pot 1 for the time being, but their position is now very fragile as they're only 1 point ahead of Germany. The Mannschaft will play the final stage of the Nations League in June and they will have an advantage. Even if they lose those matches, they will not lose points because of the rule that says that no points are deducted for losses in knockout stages. On the other hand, Italy will have a very complicated game at Norway. If they lose that match, not only will they drop out of pot 1, they will also compromise their direct qualification. Croatia are a little behind now, and getting into pot 1 on their own is a bit complicated, because the opponents that they will face in the qualifiers won't give them many points. Their chances depend on them winning all their matches and wait for other teams to sleep, either that they go to the playoffs or are outright eliminated. Morocco only has 2 qualifying matches left and they're not gonna get too many points out of that even if they win, so that pretty much rules them out of contention for pot 1. Their best chance was the African Cup of Nations last year, but they wasted that opportunity as they only got 2 points in that tournament. Finally, Uruguay and Colombia got bad results in this window and lost a lot of ground, and their chances of getting into pot 1 are really slim now. They are 39 points behind Italy and Germany, and they will need to win all the remaining matches and wait for others to fall. A bit further down, Japan and Iran have qualified and will be in pot 2, as they're way too far from pot 1 and have a healthy gap over teams in pot 3. Mexico won the Nations League but can't catch the United States, as they benefit from not losing points in these matches. However, the US played a couple of friendlies in January outside the official window, and since FIFA are not very clear about their criteria for inclusion, if they decide to exclude those matches, then Mexico will be ahead. Senegal are currently in pot 2, but right now they're second in their group and will go to the playoffs, which will send them down to pot 4. Switzerland and Denmark are relatively safe. They're 37 and 45 points ahead of Austria respectively, so as long as they qualify directly with no upsets, they will be in pot 2. Thus, the last 2 places in pot 2 will be contested, if they qualify directly, between Austria, South Korea, Ecuador, Ukraine, Australia and Turkey. As mentioned, Senegal are currently in the playoffs, which will open the door to Ecuador. In summary, pots 1 and 2 will look like this at the moment, with the already mentioned exception of Senegal and Ecuador. Now, only 12 European teams will qualify directly, and as things stand at the moment, the top 12 UEFA teams will fit into pots 1 and 2. So how will we fit pots 3 and 4? Let's have a look. Assuming that the top 12 European teams qualify directly, there will be no UEFA teams in pot 3, because as we said, all teams that qualify through the playoffs will go to pot 4. So the next 12 teams to fill pot 3 in the ranking will be this. But right now, some of them are in the playoffs or even eliminated. So which teams are currently out? The first is Peru, so who will take their place? That will be the best next ranked team, which can be Slovenia as discussed, or Chile because they are eliminated too, so that will be Costa Rica. Nigeria are also currently out, so the place will go to Qatar, who can't qualify in June but can do it in October. Venezuela and Cameroon are in the playoffs at the moment, with those tickets going to South Africa and Uzbekistan instead. And finally, Mali are out at the moment, and Saudi Arabia will take that place. In pot 4 we will have New Zealand, who have already qualified but are way too far from pot 3, the next 5 in the FIFA ranking, the 4 teams from the European playoffs and 2 from the Intercontinental playoffs. So what's the format of the latter? There will be 2 CONCACAF teams and 1 from South America, Africa, Asia and Oceania each, which will be New Caledonia. Teams will be split in 2 brackets, where the 2 highest teams in the FIFA ranking will be placed in the finals, and the other 4 will be drawn in the semi-finals. The winners from each bracket will qualify to the World Cup. This is the general overview. Of course this will change game after game, but there's only 8 matches left before the final cut, so every game and every point matters. Take what you can. Even if teams qualify early, they should not relax and say, I'm already in, it doesn't matter if I lose these matches, because all those draws and losses will cost them points that could make them drop from one pot to another, making their path in the World Cup much more difficult. Just as Italy, who for the 2014 World Cup qualified with 2 games to spare, and in those final matches they drew with Denmark and Armenia. Not winning those meaningless matches in theory cost them points that dropped them out of pot 1, and do you remember how the draw went for them? They ended up with England, Uruguay and Costa Rica and didn't make it out of the group stage. So don't take for granted those games and win them even if they seem meaningless. As usual, if you find this video useful and interesting, I will be very grateful if you could share it and visit our website and social media. Thank you.